When we look at all the things that we do and really try truly to assess how we're using our time, we find that basically we spend our time in one of four ways. I love this model that Covey created, and I've used it much in my life. Two factors that define an activity are urgent and important. Urgent means it requires immediate attention. Urgent things act on us, they push us. A ringing phone is urgent. Urgent matters are usually visible. They press on us. They insist on our action. They're often popular with others. They usually are right in front of us. Often they're easy, pleasant, fun things to do, but so often they are unimportant. Importance has to do with results. If something is important, it contributes to your mission, your values, your higher priority goals. We react to urgent matters. Important matters that are not urgent require more proactivity. So if you look at the time management matrix, you can see the different types of things that are in each of the quadrants. When we look at not urgent and not important, this can be any kind of activity, busy work, going through junk mail, social media. Sometimes I certainly understand that if you're in marketing or you just want to keep up with the lives of your family, then sometimes social media is an important way to keep in contact. But how often have you found yourself just sitting there and all of a sudden you look up and you've been perusing through social media for 30 minutes or an hour or more? So these kinds of things can really be time wasters. If you look at urgent, not important, and you think, well, of course, if it's urgent, it's important. But it's not always true. If you think about how often urgency is defined by someone else, not always, but a lot of times it is defined by another person. So sometimes those calls, the email that could really wait, some of those reports that you do, certainly a lot of meetings, especially if they're agendaless or things like that, they're urgent because someone else defined it to be urgent. It might be important to them, but maybe not to you. And sometimes there are interruptions. Those interruptions, they're not always unimportant. For example, you know that you can find with your children or with friends, their interruptions sometimes are very important. It's interruptions that kind of make our life. But a lot of times at work, when someone's just stopping by to say hi or something like that, that may or may not be important. When we look up at quadrant one, we have both urgent and important. These are things that have deadlines. They're pressing. They're deadline-driven projects, and it can be crazy. Something comes up that you weren't expecting that could happen in your personal life or your professional life. When we have a quadrant one focus, quadrant one is both urgent and important. It deals with significant results that require our immediate attention. We usually call these activities crises or problems. We all have quadrant one activities in our lives, but some people allow quadrant one to consume them. There are crisis managers, problem-minded people, deadline-driven producers. When you focus on quadrant one, it keeps getting bigger and bigger until it dominates you. When this happens, the only relief you feel is escaping to the not urgent activities of quadrant four. And you remember quadrant four is not urgent and not important. When you stay in this space, you have a high degree of stress or burnout. When you're always putting out fires, the quadrant three focus, where urgent we assume is also important, kind of like I talked about a couple of seconds ago. In quadrant three focus, these are people who spend a lot of time in urgent but not important activities. They spend most of their time reactionary. People who spend most of their time exclusively in quadrants three and four basically live irresponsible lives. Effective people avoid quadrants three and four because urgent or not, they're not important. When we have a quadrant three focus, we start to have a very short-term focus. We have a reputation or chameleon character because we're reacting. Sometimes our emotions get the best of us. We think long-term cleaning and goal setting is worthless, and that leads us to feeling victimized and out of control of our life. This often results in shallow and broken relationships as well. When we have only a quadrant 3 or a quadrant 4 focus, we're basically living an irresponsible life. The results are that we can be far from our jobs. We're dependent on others or we can be fired from our jobs. We are dependent on others or institutions for our basics. So what about having quadrant 2 focus? Quadrant 2 is the essential, the essence of personal management. This deals with the things like relationship building, writing your mission statement, long-range planning, exercising, preparation, all those things we know we need to do, but somehow we seldom get around to doing it because they aren't urgent. If you take a moment now and you think about how you answer the first two questions at the beginning of these lectures, what quadrants are they in? They're probably in quadrant 2 because they're important. They would help you to be more effective, but because they aren't urgent, you're not doing them. Quadrant 2 activities make a tremendous positive difference in our lives. Our effectiveness takes a quantum leap when we do them. When we focus here, when we spend our time here, less things go over into quadrant 1. You're always going to have quadrant 1 things, but you will have less of them if you're taking care of the important things as a regular part of your life. When you have a focus here, your results are vision and perspective. You have balance in your life, your discipline, you have control. And again, there are fewer crises, fewer things slipping over into that quadrant 1. Looking at quadrant 2, though, these are things that aren't important or aren't urgent, but they are important. So it's a relationship building, being intentional, not just interrupting, not just wasting time, being intentional planning, looking out for new opportunities, your health, preventative maintenance on your health. So these are the kinds of things that are really important, but they're not pressing. So sometimes we just don't get to them. Finally, I'd like you to go now and look at your to-do list. There's another worksheet called the time management matrix, and I'd like you to go ahead and put all of the activities you listed into where you feel the appropriate quadrant is for those activities based on the definitions we've just discussed. And once you finish that, come back and we'll talk briefly as we summarize habit 3, put first things first.